The very competent supervisor you have been watching had learned a very hard lesson about 6 years ago. You see, he had never made a strong personal commitment to achieving compliance. He was a good and caring man, but he had never thought very deeply about his role as a supervisor when it came to safety. In fact, he'd been a supervisor in this department for 6 years. One of his best workers, a die setter and press operator, was making parts on a punch press. This worker had made this particular part hundreds of times in the past. In fact, he wouldn't let anyone else make this part because it was very dangerous to run. This was a 60-ton punch press, and it could take your hand off in a heartbeat. This machine wouldn't know or care that your hand was in the way, and it wouldn't miss a beat one way or the other. The inevitable happened. The worker got out of step with the machine, and it amputated most of his right hand.
Good luck, Tom.
The investigation took 3 days, and by the third day, the supervisor was visibly upset. He hadn't slept much, and he looked as if he hadn't changed his clothes in 3 days. He was nervous and shaky. One question was very hard to ask him because it dealt with his lack of commitment to safety. But it had to be asked.
Let's review the facts. You've been the supervisor of the department in which the accident occurred for the past 6 years. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And the worker who was injured has reported to you these same past 6 years?
That's right.
And this worker was the only worker who made the part that was being made at the time of the accident. Is that correct?
Yes, he wouldn't let anyone else make the part because it was dangerous.
And he made this part on hundreds of occasions.
Yes.
And every time he made it in an unsafe manner, using the foot switch, with no guards on the machine at all.
Apparently that's the case.
Apparently. As the supervisor, are you required to see that work is done safely in this department? Is that part of your job?
Yes, it is.
Then would you tell the court, if this job was run hundreds of times during the past 6 years, and apparently every time it was made in an unsafe manner with no guards on the machine at all, and you are the supervisor who is to ensure that work is done safely in this department, would you please tell the court where you were? Would you explain to the court why you never saw this? Would you explain why you didn't hear about it from anybody? Tell us why nobody ever reported this to you. Would you please explain to the court where you were?
Where was I? That's the question that's kept me awake at night. You know, I'm not afraid of being here or being fined or put in jail. That's not what's kept me awake. Where was I? I don't know. I guess I was spending too much time in my office doing paperwork and not enough time on the floor talking to my people. I've been a supervisor at the plant for 6 years now, and I've walked by hundreds of times, but I just never saw anything. You know, I would give up everything that I own if I could just put that worker's hand back on his body. But I can't. I just wish I could turn back the clock.
The question that really bothered this supervisor was not the one that might be asked by a prosecutor, his boss, the safety committee, or a government safety officer. What had kept him awake was the question that came from his conscience.